Hello, guys, and welcome back to another episode of Politics Relaxed podcast. Today, we're going to be talking about feminism and terminations as our two main topics. We got a lot of people again today. Piers, Tommy, Cameron, Rajan, Ben, and Lily are all here to talk about today's topic. I want to start with this question. Disappointed with myself for this question, but I still want to raise it because do we still need feminism is my kind of first question. It sounds really patronizing, I know, but does anybody want to start?
Alright, so feminism back in the day started off as a wave of equality. Women who were obviously discriminated against by men started off, and they were looking for equality, simple as that. And nowadays, feminism has turned into a more different approach where women seek double standards with men. So some things that apply for women don't apply for men. So it is a question that is very interesting. Do we need feminism nowadays? I agree, yes, to a certain extent only, because yes, it is good, but some parts of it are a bit dodgy, and I think that's what we're going to discuss today.
Oh yeah, can you give like an example of what do you mean by like the double standards that you were just talking about?
Okay, so let's talk a bit about double standards. What's a double standard we face in society? Um, I feel like something such as um, rape accusations in court, such that if a man is raped by a woman, it just doesn't count, and it's not socially acceptable.
Well,
It's
first,
like,
I just
you
want
got
to
raped by a man.
I just want to cut in there because it's actually not a woman, like the legal definition of rape. I'm pretty sure a woman, like, it's not possible. I'll just check myself. I'm pretty sure it's not possible for a woman to rape a man.
I know, but that's dodgy. Like, that should not be. Like, a woman can still like sexually harass a man.
Yeah, but that's very different to rape. When you just said it, you said rape, but you should have said sexually assault because by the legal definition of rape, a woman cannot rape a man.
I think Felix is technically correct on this, although one might argue the definition is determined by the woke feminists themselves. So it's difficult to say necessarily. Oh, I pissed him off.
No, I think rape. I think the thing is, when it doesn't matter what it is, because a woman should still be able to rape. It doesn't matter, because sexual assault and rape should be considered in the same context, don't you think? In the same way?
Not really, because they're very different things. I don't want to get into a big technical legal argument because that's not why we're here. But I just wanted to make that point. I'll go to Tommy and then to Lily. Tommy.
Well, I think I've come across many people that I've enjoyed debating about this topic. You included, Felix. We've had some debates about it. I think Lily as well. We had some. But firstly, I just want to start off. I believe that the equality of the genders is a basic human right. Many years ago, women were campaigning for the rights as societal norms. We're most against them. I think that's an argument could be made in the modern Western society that most obstacles that once stood are mainly gone. Both women and men do have their problems, each to their own, which is why I entirely support the message behind feminism and true equality. But it's a shame that the movement is hindering my view in a way that is being portrayed by those that claim to represent it. Like, too often, I see misandrous, toxic comments about how hating on men is somehow empowering, and it's beyond me. I know that it's not all of them that are like this, but it's really saddening to see, and quite frankly, disrespectful to the working system that Pankhurst set up. I'm not generalizing all the feminists under this bracket, but these days too many people ride the righteousness way for their own gain. The following is a tweet which is taken by an actor, Gus Khan. He said they're not really bothered about the issues. They're involved to better themselves either in status or financial gain. Fake allies, fake outrage, fake people, all races, creeds, and genders. And this tweet did receive some backlash, but it is true. Most people that followed the BLM movement because of its trend status back in June moved on because it wasn't a popular thing anymore to them. Now, I understand that they're not the true BLM supporters, but it did get it generalized by quite a lot of people.
Yeah, I mean, I think I agree with all the points that have been made already, to be honest. But what I want to talk about a little bit is how much progress we've made in this country, because this is summed up perfectly in the 2010 Equality Act, when we're talking about the 9 protected characteristics of age, disability, gender reassignment, marriage, civil partnership, pregnancy, maternity, race, religion or belief, sex and sexual orientation. We're talking about characteristics that people cannot necessarily control or can't control at all. And we are talking about how these characteristics are now defended by the state in the shape of legislation such as the Equality Act of 2010. And what we see is consistently legislation being updated to fit the times. So, for example, previous disability legislation from 1995 was updated in this 2010 Equality Act, and it rounded everything together, and it protected characteristics like this. I would say therefore we have achieved legislative equality for women in this country and in most Western countries, which is important, and it's really representative of the progress we've made. That means that feminism has served its main purpose. However, yes, there are still some issues with sexism in our society that we haven't yet eradicated. And so it's right that there is a movement there to try and combat that. But what I don't agree with is the more witch hunt style of operating that we're seeing from the feminist movement now, where they're going to go after people and go after people and go after people just because they're male, they don't necessarily agree with everything that the feminist movement is putting forward. Or perhaps because they've broken one of the feminist movement's so-called guidelines of life, and that's what I don't agree with. And I do believe that the feminist movement needs to tone it down a little bit and get back to the core message of trying to root out sexism in our society. And that's what I think. We shouldn't be attacking certain men for being men. We shouldn't be going on witch hunts for men such as, I don't know, for example, Johnny Depp, just because they're men. We have to be making sure that we're being sensible about this and measured.
I think Johnny Depp was actually quite supported by the feminist movement, to be honest, but I'm going to go to Lily now.
Yeah, Felix, you're quite right about Johnny Depp being supported. So yeah, but I understand there are other examples. But I wanted to say that I myself identify as a feminist because I believe that all men and all women should be equal. I would never, even for a moment, suggest that women are superior to men. I would never make a joke about something that would mean I'm discriminating against men. And this is a very, very small minority of feminism, and I think that really needs to be put out, because I know you're saying it, but it's not quite coming across, because every single person that I know that I go to school with will consider themselves as feminist or supporting the feminist movement, but they are most supporting of everyone that I know. So yeah, and then coming back to the point of sexual assault, I think yes, men can be raped, but the legality is actually, the definition of it is penetration, so you can't actually say that a man was raped, which definitely needs to be changed, because this can obviously happen to a man, which is really horrible and stuff, but we need to address the fact that it's happening to women disproportionately. The statistic, 1 in 2 women in their lifetime will get sexually assaulted at some point. Not necessarily raped, but sexually assaulted. So this can range from anything really small and stuff. And this, from personal experience and from personal experience of my friends, this can actually happen. So addressing this first and then moving on to that is really important. But I'm not putting it to the sidelines, if that makes sense.
Yeah, Cameron.
I think Lily raises a really important point when talking about the difference between feminism being a feminist and supporting the feminist movement. So I would consider myself a feminist in that I support women's rights wholeheartedly, but I do not support the feminist movement in its current form because of some of the things I already mentioned. So if the feminist movement, as it is, were to once again become more centered around championing rooting out sexism from society and ensuring that across the world, because remember in so many Middle Eastern, Asian countries, African countries, women they still don't have equal rights. I think it's important that the feminist movement gets back to that point. We are trying to get equality for women across the world, and we're trying to root out sexism from society rather than the witch hunting that we've seen. And that's the reason why at the moment I consider myself fundamentally a feminist, but not a supporter of the feminist movement. But if they were to change those principles, I would support the feminist movement.
Yeah, I think both Lily and Cameron raised some good points that I kind of would like to get into more. First of all, Lily saying that equality is basic equality, because I think what's really important to remember is feminism is also like positive for men as well, which I think a lot of people forget, because I know Tommy likes to use this statistic quite a lot. But for example, 5 out of 6 times women get custody of children. And that is because women are still seen today as to be like the primary caregiver and the person that stays home and looks after the children. So it negatively affects men in many other ways, and then also toxic masculinity, which is still on the feminist agenda at the minute. And then also Cameron's point about how feminism is like, maybe in the UK we are a lot better off, but still, of course, nowhere near where we need to be, but like around the rest of the world, because a lot of the time, if we think of like women in history, for example, Emily Pankhurst, although she was like a feminist and she fought for women's rights, she was still white, cis, and came from a rich background. And that's the same with in the top 10 billionaires, there's only one, which is Alice Louis Walton, who is again white, cis, and comes from the former richest man in America. So I think we forget that this movement is not just combating like feminism, but it needs to like not just combating inequality of the sexes, but like inequality full stop. Tommy.
Yeah, just one thing you said there about Bezos's wife. I believe that her income came from the divorce, which I just think is a statistic that I thought would be nice to add, which isn't really a nice representation of the way that should be represented. But I think the way that she divorced him to get that much is a bit unfair.
I'm just going to move on a little bit to terminations, or more commonly known as abortions. I'm pretty sure people are going to have a lot of strong views on this. Does anybody want to start on like why abortion should be legal, or maybe why they shouldn't?
All right, so abortion is a pretty sensitive topic. I mean, of course, without doubt, it is a sensitive topic. Some argue that women should have the complete choice, but some argue, like some people, like out really, really popular people in the industry, such as Kanye West, he was about to get aborted, and the strength of him to the people when he was giving a speech about abortion was incredible. So I think the more important thing than whether we choose if abortion should be pro-choice or pro-life or pro-choice, the more important thing is who we control that takes the laws. Because I think there's an incredible stat that the people in America who voted against abortion in some states, so they were pro-life in some states, most of them were white old men, and I don't think they should have the say. They should be a more representative say in who gets the choice, whether it's pro-choice or pro-life. I think that's the more important thing, because there is severe misrepresentation in not only Parliament but also the United States political system.
Who was next? Ben.
I think there are some important things to consider when you're talking about abortions. So, firstly, it's that abortions are very important for medical reasons. If it seems like the mother will not survive in the pregnancy, it's important that they have that choice there to abort if necessary. And it's also important for other more kind of social reasons. So, for example, accidental pregnancies, teenage pregnancies, that could really detrimentally affect the mother's life. And I think, of course, there should be a bit of choice in there. There should be choice, and they should have a freedom of choice. But it's also important to consider when a fetus kind of starts living, because some people would say that abortion is murder, but murder only happens when people are living. So you need to kind of draw a line, and I think at the moment it's about 20 weeks where it's believed that it's living, because at that point that's where it's feasible or possible for the fetus to live if it was given birth at that moment. So I think abortions should be allowed, and they should have a freedom of choice with them, and that they can be important in some situations.
Yeah, Cameron.
Yeah, I mean, I've only got one really quick point on this, because I don't think that as a guy, it's really for me to say, or for any of us to say, whether women should be able to have abortions or not. This seems strangely liberal for me, I know, but I genuinely do not believe that it is for us to say. I do not mind, it doesn't bother me if a woman wants to have an abortion, so long as it's before the cut-off line. It doesn't bother me whatsoever, because at the end of the day, it's the woman's body, it's a female's body, and it's their choice what they can do with it. As you know, here on this panel, there is 6 boys and 1 girl. Okay, and all 6 of us should be saying the same thing, in my view, which is that we shouldn't be saying anything, really. It's up to the women to decide on this one.
Yeah, for once, I agree with Cameron. This has to be turned into a clip somehow, because this is a new high for the podcast, I think. I just kind of want to come in with a few statistics. Well, when the Roe v. Wade law came in, which legalized terminations in America, the crime rate actually reduced quite significantly, because they had quite a big problem with crime in New York, especially. So I think it's also really important for society their abortions are illegal, as well as for the general well-being of the mother and the father. Lily.
I just want to say thank you to Cameron, because I think everything he said is completely true. And the thing about being pro-choice, which is what I am, you might not necessarily feel comfortable having abortion on yourself, but you would be comfortable with someone else having it. So like having the freedom of being able to choose it, and for them being legal. Like, that doesn't mean that everyone's going to have one if they need one. It's just everyone has the choice to do it.
Yeah, I think I really like what Cameron said as well. Thank you to Cameron to bring it up. And I think it all goes back to those statistics of where the people who choose need to be women. The people who choose don't need to be old white men sitting in parliament. They need to be women to make the decision. Yeah. Women of all diversities, all religions, all representations.
Yeah, and that just kind of goes on to a wider point of equality. Tommy.
Yeah, I also mainly agree with pretty much everything said by Ben, Luca, Cameron, and Lily. Basically, I think before the cut-off period, it is the woman's choice, it's her body. and especially in situations with young pregnancies, rape victims, I think it's a very important choice to have. It's a very needed choice to have. But I think sometimes when there is, I guess you could say, past the cutoff points, I don't think it would be very hard to
Moral.
describe it.
Moral?
Yeah. Moral. I think because past that point, it's nearly fully developed. It's coming up to birth, and I think it wouldn't be really just if it were to happen past that point. Obviously, if the mum's life's in danger, or of course, if it were a rape victim or a young pregnancy, then I think it should still be allowed. I think I agree with the points raised earlier.
Yeah, I kind of would like to move on a bit more now to toxic masculinity. Toxic masculinity is used in an academic and media discussion of masculinity to refer to certain cultural norms that are associated with harm, society, and men themselves. So I think that would include I brought up before about the custody of children. And also another one is mental health, the stigma around men's mental health, because it is the biggest killer of men under 40. All right, Piers.
Yeah.
Well, first off, I believe that men need to be masculine. There's no point in making men feminine because, well, that just defeats the point of families in the first place. Families are very important in society, not only economically but for the general progress of society in general. We can see that from people who grew up without a father, they're a lot less successful. They're at far greater risk of incarceration and teen pregnancy and poverty. 71% of high school dropouts in America are fatherless, and well, I mean, it's a real shame that 1 in 4 fathers now lives apart from their children. Like Barack Obama himself said, of all the rocks upon which we build our lives, family is the most important. And to make a family, you need to have a masculine man. The answer to toxic masculinity isn't less masculinity, it's better masculinity. You need to take the aspects that make masculinity masculine and apply them for good rather than bad, which is what they use for in violence, rape, and war.
Yeah, I kind of want to delve into that point a bit more because, like, you talk about this idea of masculinity and femininity, but what do you mean by like masculinity? Because it's a very broad like term. How would you like define masculinity? I suppose.
I suppose aggression and unbridled ambition. That's these are the main elements here that can't be eliminated from the male psyche. They need to be harnessed as tools for good. They need to be made into the traits that foster like good economies. And they need to stay away from the traits that drive men to take foolish risks and in the name of masculinity.
But like, what do you mean by unbridled? How can a man have more unbridled ambition than a woman? That really doesn't make sense to me. Like, where is your evidence that men are more like have more ambition than women, for example? I'm like, I'm slightly confused by like how can men have more ambition?
Well, I mean, name an inventor. I mean,
But that is
throughout
not.
history,
No, no. That is not.
thank you.
It's not their masculine because like it's not because they are a man that they are in a, or it is, but it's not because their masculinity that they're.
All right, forget that point. Forget that point. Just
Kind of,
it's not like you really need a definition of masculinity. Like, you know what masculinity is.
but it's a social construct. It's not like an actual biological thing. You're talking about a social construct here and making it like really important when I don't know if it is, and we need to change that social construct. I'll go to Lily.
Here, okay. Wait, one sec. Masculinity. Traits traditionally viewed as masculine in Western society include strength, courage, independence, leadership, and assertiveness.
Yeah, but that's a complete social construct, isn't it? That's not like an actual biological thing. That is a social construct, right?
Well, I mean, I don't know any chemicals or anything, but men are physically taller and stronger, and I guess that would lead like
No.
the primitive nature of our brains to assume them as leaders, but that's beside the point.
Maybe like that, but all right, Lily.
Okay, I have several points. Firstly, about your statistic with fathers, that's growing up fatherless. That's not growing up with a father who's in touch with his feminine side. And also, families come in all different shapes and sizes. Every single family is different. Every single father is different. Not every single family has a father. Some may have two. Some may have two mothers. It's just all different now. And secondly, I really don't appreciate you like taking all these characteristics and associating them with men, when I, for one, am most of those characteristics. And a lot of girls that I know are some of those characteristics. And a lot of women who have grown up are a lot of those characteristics. So taking those characteristics and taking them solely to men is completely offensive to me. And then finally, when you're saying that for someone to be successful, they've got to be in touch with them, they've got to be masculine. But I know Felix is going to hate me for this because he hates the band. But if you look at Harry Styles, he is in touch with his feminine side, everything that has come out with Vogue, and he is so successful. And he is an icon. I'm just going to put that out there.
Yeah, I don't like Harry Styles, but he's, as a person I don't mind him, but as a singer, no. Piers.
That wasn't me defining those characteristics. That was Wikipedia. Like,
before it was when you said,
yeah, that's because I didn't know any then.
Okay, so you just pulled some characteristics out of the air, so it shows that
Well, yeah, you get your facts out of the air, don't you?
No, I don't. I have what? Tell me.
Yours isn't facts. You've just chosen those.
If you want any of my fact checks, please ask me, and I won't fact check them. But that's beside the point. Oh yeah, Cameron.
Yeah, thanks. I think I want to return a bit of sensible balance to this conversation, because I feel as though it's getting a little heated. So, firstly, the point Lily made about families coming in all sorts of different shapes and sizes was exactly the point I was going to make. So that's brilliant. But the other point I have to make, and I just want to weigh in a bit on these characteristics conversation, because if you do look, there are obviously biological differences between men and women, and personality characteristics are obviously in part orchestrated by the differing hormones. So there is biological sense in Pearce's argument, but I think he's taking it a little bit far. At the same time, it's perfectly fine for guys to have a feminine side, and it's perfectly fine for girls to have a more masculine side. I mean, I don't see why we are trying to push people into certain pools or characteristics. It's just not the reality, because there are plenty of men who have more feminine hormones as well, and these are differences. So there are actually biological differences between the two, but there are also biological similarities. So if you're going to try and put out the argument that they are different because they have different personality characteristics, I don't buy into that at all. Because if you actually look at the proper biology, there are many characteristics and many hormones, for example, that are shared between both men and women that can present these kinds of circumstances that we're talking about.
Yeah, there's both. It's testosterone and estrogen, isn't it?
Okay, I'll go to Tommy, but I just want to say thanks to Cameron and Lily for making my points and making them sound actually cohesive. Tommy.
I'm about to go into about some stats, which I understand that might not be the most exciting thing in the world, but I think it's important to get the message out, which some people don't obviously take a look into. I think Felix has probably seen most of these because me and him have had quite a few fair debates on these. Right, here we go. Men are at the end of most double standards. I think we covered that at the start. 97% of combat fatalities, they pay 97% of alimony. They make 95% of work suicides, 93% work fatalities, 81% of war deaths, and are 90% more likely to be drafted at young ages, which I think it might be linked back a little bit to the biological discussion we were just having in class biology lesson. They lose custody of 84% divorces, some of which I respect may be justified. However, most of them, if we look into recent years, have been quite biased. I think it would be fair to say. 80% of suicides, 77% of homicides victims, 89% of men will be victims of violent crime, over twice as victimized by strangers as women, 171% more likely to be convicted, and they get 63% longer sentences for the exact same crime, which, don't take this out of context or the wrong way, but it apparently is 6 times bigger than the racial bias. They're less likely to be accepted into universities for receiving the same grades as their female counterparts. They face more corporal punishments, 80% of homeless people. Women's cancers receive 15 times more funding. 10% of fathers are victims of paternity fraud. 47% of domestic abuse victims will receive only 0.6% of the support. Well, they live about 5.1 years less, which again, I guess can go back to the biology lesson we just had. Higher cancer death rates, higher unemployment rates, circumcision remains legal, no gender exclusive scholarships, and something I just want to get out is that men's rights activists are not about misogyny, but equality. Like, we're hoping to get these issues more into the public eye, which some people don't see as valid or mostly just cast under the carpet. And I think Felix shared a video a few weeks back of an MP who was ridiculed for requesting a men's mental health minister, mostly by, again, those that didn't conduct much research on the points that I've just stated.
Well, actually, I want to respond to the point about the video that I shared the other day. It was actually of a person asking for a men's minister, not a men's mental health minister, which I would support a men's mental health minister, and I think that is really important. But most of the majority of those statistics tie into this idea of toxic masculinity, which the feminist movement is also trying to take on. So, but I think there is a real image problem with men's rights activists, and rightly so, because a lot of them are incels who actually do not like women because they aren't able to like get a girlfriend. So they get a very bad rep, and for good reasons, because there have been incidents where these people have attempted to bomb or kill women. So there is a good reason why men's rights activists are frowned upon. Who was that? Ben.
I just want to say a few things about his earlier points. I think saying that men need to be masculine is one example of kind of like a societal dogma, stigma around a sex agenda, and one that is perhaps in many ways too rigid, and we need to open that up to allow to be more inclusive, allow more people their expressions and their personalities. And I think that relates back to the feminine movement on the other side, because one thing is important to kind of put these kind of stereotypes, these rigid stereotypes at bay, and make sure that our society is inclusive as possible, so that we can include as many personalities as we can. And as Lily said, families come in all shapes and sizes. So, yeah.
Yeah. What was I going to say? I forgot, but I will go to Piers and then to Lily.
I mean, I think, well, partly me and partly everyone else have misconstrued my point here. I'm not saying that like some men can't be more feminine if they want to be more feminine. That's fine. I'm all for people doing what they want. I'm just saying that you shouldn't force the men that want to be masculine to be feminine. Like the growing problem is that the current trend is to feminize young men in the hopes of achieving some utopian notion of equality and peace, and that starts at the earlier stages.
Where have you got that from?
What do you mean?
Like, who's feminizing these like young men?
All right, sure. Well, in primary school, well, no, the lack of competition that is being established, like participation trophies, like telling young people that their desire to compete is wrong, that sort of thing.
Well, really, how are participation trophies in any way linked to masculinity? I'm going to go to Lily.
Okay.
I just well, okay, yeah. So I just wanted to put some stats in, like, sort of just on the female side of things, but I'm not saying this in any way to invalidate the statistics that Tommy put forward, because I think they're really disheartening and they're not very nice to see, and I think they definitely need to be addressed, because that is something, like, especially men's mental health, that really needs to be addressed, because well, people are losing their lives, and I feel that's something that needs to be addressed urgently. So I'm not saying this just to completely dismiss Tommy, but I'm just going to bring some in. So one that's found really interesting is there are more CEOs named John than there are women CEOs altogether in the whole world, which is quite funny, to be honest. And 1 in 3 women are sexually assaulted at some point in their lifetime. So these are 2 things that you need to tackle. And I think for feminism to, like, bring back its image, especially like in the likes of social media, we need to show that, like, we're taking in these male statistics and creating a platform of activism and change that both benefits women and men. And I think that's really important to, like, reiterate, is that feminism is about making men and women equal and tackling each of these issues individually. And I think if you look at social media accounts, they address this too. But my last point is, if anyone knows the account called Feminist on Instagram, that is run by 2 male CEOs, like multi-millionaires, and a lot of other platforms are too, but that's just a little separate point, going off a weird sort of tangent there, but that's just a point I just wanted to say.
Yeah, Tommy, and then we'll finish with Cameron.
Just a little, from what you said earlier in response to my message about toxic masculinity, I do agree it's a big issue that needs to be addressed. I just don't like the way that it's named. I think toxic masculinity paints a bad image. It makes it look like they're the ones that are at fault for their own news.
Okay, Cameron.
Firstly, I want to say I think Pierce's point is, to be honest, nonsense, actually. And I think it's a proper misrepresentation of a kind of almost valid viewpoint, which I think is disappointing. I don't see any evidence at all of attempts to feminize our young people in this country. And I'm saying this as a pretty socially conservative teenager. So I think that's not a valid point at all. Now I want to talk about the other couple of points. I really like the point Lily made about the Feminist Instagram account being run by two men. I think it's actually quite representative of these kind of politically correct movements that we're seeing. And this is bringing it into, I know, a completely different argument altogether. But what we're seeing now, I think, is a situation where privileged old white men with plenty of money who have made money from their own ambitions are now trying to tell other people what to think, and are trying to further causes, force it on people, even if they don't necessarily believe in it. I think that's an obvious issue. I also still think that sexism is an issue, and I think there's more for the feminist movement to do in this country and across the world to tackle individual incidents of sexism and to root out sexism from society, as I've said already, and to try and ensure that we are maintaining equality of opportunities for girls as well as boys. And I think that's important, but I do think it's important that the feminist movement changes into a more accepting movement. It's sort of more accepting of men as well. So yeah, I mean, to sum up, I mean, these are big issues, and we're going to carry on talking about them for quite a while. So yeah, cut that little so out.
Yeah. I think everyone has kind of proved today. If we go back to the first kind of point that we raised, do we still need feminism? Like, whether it be for the men's side or for the women's side, I think that like everybody here has proved today that it's still a valid movement and that it needs to happen. I'm gonna finish with Tommy, and then we'll call it there.
Yeah, just a few little responses. Firstly, earlier, the way that you said most men's rights activists were incels, I find that quite ridiculous, actually. I would consider myself both a supporter of the views of the feminist movement and of men's rights movements. I think it's not really as toxic as it seems. It's mostly to put these issues into the spotlight. And I think, following on from what Piers has said, again, I agree with Cameron. I don't think it's very valid arguments to say that most men should be feminized or whatever, because there isn't really anyone advocating this. However, back to the talk about the feminist accounts, I think some of the stuff that they put up there is quite controversial and quite ridiculous. I mean, it's very one side. It's a very one-sided view to take, and apart from that, I think the idea is right. The people representing it can sometimes be a bit overboard. As my final.
Piers.
So I mean, I haven't put my point across great throughout this whole thing, and I apologize on behalf of that. And I know I've sounded pretty mean, but overall, I'm just trying to say that masculinity shouldn't be removed from men who want to be masculine, and that families are the most important factor in a society of the public. I can't define masculinity because I think that's subjective. I know I tried to earlier and I failed miserably. The traits that I mentioned earlier are also subjective, so ignore that, the two people that watch this. But
If you somehow didn't enjoy this episode, you could have watched Rajan walking around the streets going into Sainsbury's. But if you did enjoy it, please like and subscribe, and just go and follow all our social medias. Go and check out another episode as well. Thank you everyone for turning up and being here, and also thank you for listening.
Thank you.